Hello, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, Syria through the eyes of Russians. What are they saying about Syria? And how do they view their country's relations with the US? Our digital producer Malika Bilal is here looking out for your live feedback. I am calling today Tweet a Russian.
I like that.
But not anything. They have to tweet a Russian about their perspective on Syria, because we have a great lineup of Russian guests.
We do. I like that title, and we're also already seeing those tweets come in. Lots of tweets from Russians. We're also seeing some from Syrians in particular who want to know what Russian citizens think about the situation. Now, this one sums it up pretty well. Susanna tweets in, does the general Russian public even know what Assad, meaning Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president, is doing? We'll have an answer for her soon enough, but for those of you at home, we want to hear your questions and your comments, so send them to us with hashtag AJStream.
Also joining our conversation, he's leaning forward on the desk, ready to join in. We have Peter Eltsov. Peter is a Washington-based journalist and political analyst of Russia, Middle East and South Asia. Peter, it's great to have you in the stream.
Thank you so much.
Are you prepared for Tweet a Russian?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. We're looking forward to hearing more from you in just a moment.
Sure.
Okay, so some of you streamers already know this, but for those of you who don't, our program depends on you joining in, and we love hearing the stories happening in your community. So if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover, it's really easy to do that. All you do is go to our About page, and that's at stream.aljazeera.com/about, and that's where I am right now. And then you will find my Twitter handles, Malika's, and all of our producers. You can send us your idea, you can tweet it to us, and it could turn into a future show. It's that easy.
I am Yusuf Al-Khoui, and I'm a director for Center for Academic Shia Studies, and I'm in the stream.
From the start of the war in Syria, the United States and Russia stood on opposite sides, the US backing the Syrian opposition and Russia standing by the government. The latest disagreement came over chemical weapons. After weeks of back and forth on who used them, Russia proposed to secure the handover of Syria's chemical weapons. Syria quickly accepted, followed by the White House welcoming the plan as a chance for diplomacy. And then, in a New York Times op-ed by President Vladimir Putin directed at the American people, the Russian leader stressed a new opportunity to avoid military action. As he put it, this opportunity would improve the atmosphere in international affairs and strengthen mutual trust between the two nations. In response, hashtag Putin for Peace trended, with thousands of mentions, and some used it to praise Putin's efforts while others sarcastically disagreed. So today, we want to hear about the conversations Russians are having, not just about that New York Times piece, but about the conflict in Syria and the current status of US-Russia relations. To help us do that, we're also joined by Roman Dobrokhovtov. He's an activist and blogger in Moscow. He's also the founder of a youth movement called WE, which aims to defend civil rights and political reforms in Russia. Viktor Livanov is a blogger and political consultant in Moscow, and Timothy Vasilyev is a blogger in St. Petersburg. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you. Looking forward to you giving me Russian lessons any moment now. Timothy, starting with you, first of all.
Yeah, hi.
If we're going to tap into your brain about what Russians are talking about when it comes to Syria, do Russians care deeply about the news in Syria?
Not much, actually, because of Syria is very far away from our country, but still they've heard some stuff about Syria and some news. And the latest thing that I think most of our people heard, that Putin just had saved the lives of some civilians in Syria and proposed an alternative solution for solving this conflict. That's all.
So Timothy, when you say not much, when was the last time you talked about Syria other than today?
Actually, I was talking about Syria like the previous day before today, and that's maybe because I'm kind of in politics, in some news discussion and so on. But usually people don't talk much about international news and international politics.
Peter?
Yeah, I think actually the majority of Russians don't care at all. And I think even if they do talk about Syria, it's more of an internal issue about the future of Russia for better or worse, and probably subconsciously, they clearly, in my view, don't care that much. It's way more about the prestige of the Russian Federation and President Putin in the international arena rather than about Syria. So that's what they care about.
Well, Timothy, it's interesting you said that they don't care at all. Thomas on Facebook agrees. He says, I don't think the average Russian citizen is concerned with what's going on in Syria. Russia is an imperfect democracy where people's organization isn't fully developed. That's what he says. I want to know if we'll get some pushback on that. But we also have a tweet here from Michael who says, I don't condone it, but most Russians are more concentrated on their hard living than their government's foreign policy. So, Roman, is that why you have some of your compatriots saying that Russians don't care that much about Syria?
Well, on the one hand, I think in all countries people don't care a lot about some events in faraway countries. So we can say, I think, the same about Americans, or I don't know, Europeans. But we have some difference, I think, in Russia because official media is controlled by the government. That's why our people get picture through the field Kremlin. That's why Kremlin can put some emphasizes what is important and what is not. And now Kremlin is trying to make a question of Syria important because they think of the latest Putin proposal as a huge diplomatic victory, and that's why they try to explain what's happening there and what is the Russian role, because it seems that Russia has a real big role in this conflict, and maybe nowadays maybe it is so right now. So that's why that is a good time for Kremlin to really to explain Russians where Syria is on the map and what is happening there.
Okay, Peter, you're muttering. Just share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, 2 points. 2 points. The first point, the people who care about Syria, as I'm saying, they care primarily about Russia, because there is this paranoia, and particularly paranoia spread by the Russian government, that it's not the issue about the Syria. If Syria goes, the next is Iran, and the final target is Moscow. That's what some of the elites and political analysts in Russia are thinking, that somehow the U.S., the final target of the U.S. foreign policy is Moscow. So they're presenting that it's not about Syria. In the end, it's about Iran and Russia. And this is a very important point, because like otherwise they wouldn't even care, I think.
Victor.
I think most of our people care in the amount that TV gives it, and some news sets and some new programs, of course, speak about Syria, and not all of our people just care, but a lot of people at least know about Syria conflict and about the latest news from Syria, and what to the paranoia of somebody intervening or attacking Russia. I don't think it's possible, and moreover, I've not ever seen at least even one person who really believes that somebody can in some near future have some plans attacking Russia, taking a part of its territory or interacting. I think it looks like crazy.
It's not the plan to attack Russia, but it's like directly, but it's the paranoia which is spread, I think, in some of the Russian media, that there is a plan of a regime change in Russia by whatever means. And the regime change meaning by creating a political situation through like riots, opposition, through instability. There is also a fear that jihadis will infiltrate Russia. So this is what I'm talking about. Clearly, like no one hopefully normally thinks that there is a plan on the part of the Americans to invade Russia militarily.
Sure. Victor, what's your take?
Yeah. I just want to say that you forgot. We in Russia have some internal. We have mayoral elections, and Russian people pay attention to this. When I publish the post about Mr. Navalny or something with elections, all post, like, share, yes. When I publish the post about Syria war, nobody cares, because Russians pay attention to mayoral elections, maybe.
Of course, some domestic business makes more sound and make people pay more attention to it. It's normal.
Gentlemen, I promised you that you would get some Twitter action, and we're getting it already.
A lot of Twitter action.
What do we have?
Well, our community wants to move the conversation on a little bit and hone in on Putin. We have a tweet here from Amir who says, Vladimir Putin is a hero of our time. He made the Americans understand the gravity of war, and he provided an alternative to it. But on the other hand, as I'm sure you knew we would have, Christian says, Putin, in his op-ed that Femi mentioned a little bit earlier in this show, there are few champions of democracy in Syria, Putin wrote. This ignores the fact that this person tweets that the regime exiled, disappeared, or killed many of those champions of democracy in Syria. So, Roman, what is the view on the ground of Putin? Is this an attempt of posturing, or is there an actual attempt to put the needs of the Syrian people at heart?
Well, maybe if we divide this question in two parts, and if we ask what about using weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, in this case, maybe Putin's role is, of course, very positive, because he suggested a diplomatic decision, and it worked. So I don't think actually it was Putin's idea. It's I think idea of our foreign ministry. Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is very experienced, and I think that idea worked. But then we ask, okay, but what after that? So we let both sides kill each other with conventional weapons, because we understand that giving up chemical weapons is not the end of the war. So we have two difficult questions about how we can stop the civil war, how the international community can influence on this, and the second question, and who will be the next, who will be in power after Assad, or with Assad, or maybe it will be Assad alone. So how can we construct the institutional system there? And both questions are still open, and Putin didn't give any idea of how to solve it.
And let me, just as we're talking about President Putin, I just want to play a little clip as he was talking to RT, that's Russia Today, that is a state-backed broadcaster in Russia, and also it's broadcast internationally. And the interviewer at RT asked President Putin, are you just backing a dictatorial government who are actually killing their own people? So, tough question. Have a listen to the answer.
We're not defending the current Syrian government. We're defending other things entirely. We're defending the principles and norms of international law. We're defending the current world order. We're defending the rule that even a possibility of using force must be discussed within the framework of existing world order and international law. This is what we're defending. This is the absolute value. When decisions concerning the use of force are made outside the UN and the Security Council, it raises a concern that such illegal actions could be taken against any country under any pretext. You've just said that Mr. Kerry...
So, Peter, when President Obama was talking in the US and he spoke to the people, he was obviously trying to persuade Americans to get behind him in what he wanted to do as far as Syrian diplomacy is concerned. What do you think President Putin is trying to do here with the Russian audience? Well,
it's a complete, I think his op-ed is just a show of hypocrisy, completely. And I think the credit here belongs not to him but to President Obama for what President Obama did. It was much more difficult for Obama to make this decision. For Putin, it's an old Cold War mentality competition with the United States. He wants to poke Obama as much as he can. I'm very happy, and all reasonable people, I think, are happy that the strikes got delayed, but that's not because of him.
Is that your opinion, or are you tapping into public opinion?
It is my opinion.
Yeah.
The Russian people think differently. Of course, a lot of Russian people, but there are Russian people, believe it or not, who think this way. This is a small percentage of people, but there are quite a few. And my friends in St. Petersburg think this way. I know quite a few Russians who think this way.
Tim?
Peter, actually, do you think that strike is cancelled or just delayed? Because it looks like it's cancelled and there will be no more chemical weapons arguing about the Syria, just maybe some arguing about military operation in general.
it may be delayed. We don't know. It may be delayed, but the war is clearly the last option. And it's good if they're delayed or if they're cancelled. But I'm saying it's not about Mr. Putin, unfortunately. It's not. He's very happy that the world perceives it this way, but it's not about him. I think it's way more about internal American policy and the realization on the side of President Obama to make this decision.
Peter, you brought up the
right.
Cold War, the Cold
right.
War mentality. We have a Facebook comment from Wahid. He says, I think the Russians still have, and rightfully so, wounds that are healing from the U.S. Saudi-backed Afghan war, which resulted in the collapse of the USSR. So could you elaborate on that? Are Russians, hesitant about getting into a war with the thoughts of the fall of the Soviet Union?
Yeah, they are hesitant of getting into any war, but then you should remember why I said that Putin is that's a show of hypocrisy. At the same time, there was a Russian-Georgian war in 2008, which was not sanctions at all by the United Nations. And
well,
go ahead, who's that?
It was 2008, and the president was Dmitry Medvedev, not Putin.
Well, but I mean, we all know. I mean,
nice
President Medvedev
Peter,
was
he called you on that.
Yeah, well, President Medvedev was a seat warmer. I mean, this is just a joke, basically. I mean, the de facto ruler of Russia was Vladimir Putin. And the point, there are enough people in Russia today who think this way and who share this point of view. This is probably a small percentage, I agree, but there are enough. And that class, the creative class about which you were talking about.
So, Roman, I'm really curious about the media that you're seeing in Russia and the punditry that you're hearing in Russia. Can you explain the media landscape as far as the Syria story is concerned?
Well, I think speaking about Russian media and Russian people on the whole, we can see a major difference between how this question covered here and in Western countries. And the main difference is that question of civil rights and human rights of people in Syria is not what is discussed here. So it's not what is the main value for Russians, unfortunately. So when
it's the stability, political stability.
When after using chemical weapons, it was extremely important in West media, because that was the proof that something got over the red line, whether it was opposition or the government. So this is not just a commercial war, it's something that violates rights of thousands of people. While in Russia, both by media, by politicians, officials, this conflict usually is seen within the framework of geopolitical game,
right, okay.
And almost nobody thinks about rights of common people there.
Not children dying, not 6 million Syrians being displaced,
Absolutely.
Not sarin gas, who may or may not have used it. So it's literally about politics and where Russia stands in international politics. That's what you're getting from your media. I'm guessing that's a yes.
Well, the media also, I think the Russian media very much presents the side that it's not the Bashar Assad who is a villain, but it's their position who are way worse. The media clearly in Russia, the mainstream media is saying that it's their position who is creating all the troubles. These are the bad guys. These are the guys who use the chemical weapons. These are the guys who kill the children. And if they come to power, they will be way worse than Bashar Assad. That's the whole point.
I've once visited Facebook page of so-called rebels of Syria with a lot of videos from these rebels where they were killing Syrian army soldiers and so on. But once I found a video there where there were some beard guys called Mojaheds. You know, they are terrorists actually, and they were speaking Russian, and they were talking like we are from Russia, we've done jihad in Russia, and we are here in Syria to do the jihad. Actually, these were these rebels, and I know how what they were doing here in Russia. They were killing our people in Chechnya in 90s, in both two Chechen wars. They were doing it for money, and now they're on the Syrian rebels channel saying they're just doing jihad. How can I just tolerate their stuff they're doing?
It's true.
Well, of course, the title of jihadist and terrorist will be disputed by others. But what I want to go to now is a tweet from a Syrian, because we promised that they're coming in. Rafif Jojati, who's actually was a former guest on one of our shows in the stream talking about Syria. She writes in, how do Russians feel about the fact that their government is supplying the weapons that are killing Syrian civilians? Victor, I want to pose that one to you.
Oh, excuse me, just a second. The tweet again.
She says, how do Russians feel about the fact that their government is supplying weapons that are killing Syrian civilians? We're running out of time, so give us your answer in about 30 seconds.
No. Russian government supply weapons. Okay. American government don't supply weapons to any country. Okay. You know, I can remember Libya or Afghanistan or maybe Iran. A lot of examples when U.S. government supply weapons to them.
So that's a tit for tat answer there then. Thank you so much, Victor. We will be getting back to Timothy, to Victor, to Roman and Peter as well. Our conversation will continue at stream.aljazeera.com in the post show. But in the meantime, here's Malika with some of the other stories the stream is following.
The evidence is in. Scientists in Canada are frustrated at what they say is a government attempt to cut scientific research. Demonstrators spread out across 17 cities Monday to protest funding cuts to scientific institutions. Showing images of muzzled faces, protesters also demanded a probe into reports that government scientists are no longer able to communicate research to the public. Well, dressed in white lab coats, demonstrators chanted, "What do we want? Evidence-based decision-making." Catchy. Their calls echoed across Twitter as netizens got the hashtag #StandUpForScience trending. Steph tweets, "Stand up for science, Canada. Support those scientists who can't speak out for themselves." And from Canada to Kenya, where the first witness has testified at the International Criminal Court trial of Deputy President William Ruto. Watching live streams of the trial in which Ruto is charged with orchestrating crimes against humanity, netizens tweeted witness testimony in real time. Witness 536 names and describes the attackers she saw at the Kiamba Church, Citizen TV tweets, referencing an alleged church arson attack following disputed elections in 2007. "I saw a woman pushed on the ground and raped. It was the first time I had seen a rape happen," Citizen TV quoted the witnesses saying. Her testimony is the first after 4 other witnesses decided against taking the stand. Using hashtag why ICC witnesses are pulling out, Elkanah tweets, "You don't testify against your president and his deputy and expect you and your relatives to live in peace." Well, if you're following the ICC trial in Kenya, we want to know. Tweet us your thoughts using hashtag AJStream. Femi?
Do you know my favourite story in Leeds that you did today? The Canadian protests.
With that catchy slogan.
What do we want? Evidence-based testing. When do you want it? Anytime now.
It will catch on. It might just catch on.
It really made me laugh. Peter, how's your stream experience been so far?
It's fantastic.
Are you ready for the post show at stream.aljazeera.com?
Yes, I'm ready.
What's interesting about you is that you've kind of got a foot in both camps. You're Russian, you're in the US, so you can't not be affected by what's happening here in the US.
I'm deeply affected.
Absolutely.
I think I am deeply affected, and in a sense it's because I have also sympathy and affiliation with both countries, and I love both countries.
Sure.
And I think I'm actually very upset, I would say, about the state of US-Russian relations right now, that it came basically to the worst point since the Cold War.
Wow. We're going to be tapping into more of your thoughts in the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Sure. Hopefully we won't get you too much more upset, but it's really nice to be able to tap into that experience and seeing Russia and the US from your perspective. We'll also be talking to our guests. We're taking them all across to the post show, but I have time to tell you what we're doing in the next AJ stream. Here's a headline to make you sit up. Drought-stricken region discovers a massive water reserves. We'll be heading to Turkana in Kenya tomorrow to check out that story. It's a fascinating one. Don't miss it. See you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. We've been trying to get a sense of Russian public opinion on the ongoing war in Syria and the current US-Russia relations. And the guests who've been helping us do that are Peter Eltsov, he's a political analyst of Russia, Middle East and South Asia. Roman Dobrokov is an activist and blogger in Moscow. He's also the founder of a youth movement called WE, which aims to defend civil rights and political reforms in Russia. Viktor Levanov is a blogger and political consultant in Moscow. And Timothy Vasilyev is a blogger in St. Petersburg. So, gentlemen, it's great to have you all back here in the post show. I want to show you some pictures that really started off a whole new discussion of Syria in the United States and around much of the West. And I'm going to warn our audience as well, because it's going back to the sarin gas attack or the chemical weapons attack that happened in a suburb outside of Damascus in Syria, and that was on August the 21st. So these pictures went viral. A lot of the news organizations covered them. When you saw these pictures, Tim, what was your reaction, and what was the general public's reaction in Russia?
Actually, any violence is bad, and especially this video was shocking. Because of there are a lot of people dead, and at least they look dead. And of course, the guys who did it must be punished in any way. But still, we don't know who did it, and. Of course, if you're asking if, for example, I would be in a Bashar Assad and would I apply on this chemical attack, knowing that the US will have a wish to strike me after that, of course I wouldn't do it, and it would be stupid of him doing this.
So Tim, the UN is saying that this attack, and there's a lot of feeling that the attack was done by the Syrian government, the Syrian regime, but are you mirroring public opinion in Russia where you're still not sure who did the attack?
I think that most of people here in Russia even don't think about this question. But generally, of course, all the media say that this is Bashar Assad, and there are some other media. Not all the news, not all the papers, but some of the channels speaking that it is still unknown who did this and who just made this tape, because it came out of the blue, and nobody still I think nobody still knows where did it come from, and this is a question itself.
Yeah, I don't think this is the impression, or my impression, of Russian public opinion and Russian media. Russian mainstream media really trying to say that it was done by the opposition, and that it was a provocation. That's also the position very much of the government. Lavrov keeps saying that we don't know, that must have been done. It was stupid for Assad. Putin said openly it was stupid and suicidal for Assad to do that. So they imply that it was done by the opposition, and the implication even goes further. They're trying to say that it was actually done somehow inspired by the Americans or whatever in order to initiate the strikes. This is kind of a conspiracy paranoia theory, and I think a lot of Russian people unfortunately share this point of view today.
Victor, what's your point of view?
I suppose not all the Russian media supports pro-Kremlin opinion. You know, we have very different media in Russia. Some of them think that it's opposition, some think that it's Bashar Assad, but the majority of them think nobody cares about Syria.
I don't know if I can agree with that. Yeah.
All right, so we have disagreement here. While I will allow you to disagree, and then I will go to the community, and then we'll maybe come back and explore that further. Malika.
Well, there's actually a video comment here. I'd like you to have a listen to this.
Right.
The Russian government is siding with Assad for merely strategic interests, for the contract weapons they have, and also to keep foot in the Mediterranean waters, as their last naval bases enter to Syria. If they cared about the human part, they would not be using this war on terrorism excuse that everybody who's on the wrong side seems to be using these days. And they would have not voted against the draft solution proposed by Morocco at the UN in January 31st.
So Peter, she asks about diplomatic solutions, but before you answer that, we got a Facebook comment from Wahid who says, I think Russia regrets the Gaddafi event in Libya and perhaps has learned that if Russia wants to survive, it must show its authority and tell the US and NATO, here's the line which you cannot cross. So Syria is that line.
In fact, you're very right that you brought up Libya, because Putin, like if you remember, he was all like so upset and so mad about what happened to Gaddafi. And I actually wrote a piece about it, that I think that on the subconsciousness level, he's afraid that something like that may happen to him. And that's why he's so like basically supportive. It's completely not about human rights, and he's scared about the war and about the people. He wants to support Assad because he's very annoyed by what the West is doing. He doesn't share any more liberal values. It's completely not about any human rights. And I very much agree with that, actually, with that comment and with that video.
Video comment.
Victor?
Yep.
I hear and I can tell that you're not absolutely on the same page as Peter. Why not?
That's ridiculous, because I don't think that Russian people can shoot Putin on his head, or what was with Gaddafi's part of his body. I suppose we have in Russia very you know, in Russia it speaks молчаливое большинство, silent majority, something like this. So I don't think they can make with Putin something.
Yeah, but they're not silent. They go and vote for Putin, and they actually write in their blogs and everything. They're not that silent.
Blood killing is a media killing, but not a serious killing of a leader.
Okay,
of
how much of Russian citizens just go blogging, go protesting, or go even writing something pro-Kremlin or some opposition to Kremlin? I don't think there are too much people who even care about all this stuff, but at the majority, people are really like lazy and very inertial. So I don't think Putin is really afraid of something, and he really thinks that something like what happened in Iraq, or what happened with Gaddafi, which happened in Russia. And even more, Gaddafi was a kind of friend of Putin, because Gaddafi once was in Moscow and even made his like in a summer camp in the Kremlin, and he just put his like tent house. But still, Gaddafi is dead, and Putin did not protect him from United States or from whoever.
But he clearly wishes he could have protected him. And I mean, he was so excited in a bad sense. He was so upset and angry when it happened. I mean, no one could predict what would have happened with Mubarak and what happened with Mubarak after so many years of being in charge of Egypt. I mean, Russia is also a very unpredictable country. No one knows what's going to happen in 10 years or 15 years. And it seems like Putin is planning to stay in power forever, or at least for another 11, 12 years. So I think the analogy between him thinking about his own fate when he looks at all of the states and the fates of the dictators is very clear today.
Roman, go ahead.
The pictures of people killed in this terroristic attack, or maybe governmental attack, we don't know, they were not shown in Russian media at all. So we didn't discuss the problem of people killed, and we only think about the political consequences. And now it's every day easier and easier for Putin to switch this discussion from the problems of civil rights to the problem of geopolitics, because the conflict has changed. Because we remember that 2 years ago it was the conflict between almost democratic opposition against military authoritarian dictatorship, and now there is a real civil war where everybody is against everybody, and there are lots of different religious and national minorities who are waging this war, thinking that if they give up, there will be massacre against them, and that is really possible. So this changing of the conflict, that's a place for Putin, because he tells us, look, who the US is supporting. They're supporting extremists, they are supporting these Muslim rebels, and that's why they try to show here this picture of these people with birds and guns, and not showing the pictures of thousands of dead people after the chemical weapons attack.
Gentlemen, I've been listening to you for the last 40 minutes, and my takeaway from your conversation is obviously not everyone's going to be on the same page about this, but I love the fact that you're sharing your opinions. But the sense I'm getting is that Russians are kind of apathetic about what's happening in Syria. Their concerns about Syria is more to do with Russian power and positioning than actually a humanitarian crisis. That is a huge breakthrough, watching this discussion happening from a completely different part of the world. Is there any other last piece of information that can give me clarity as to how Russians are thinking that the rest of the world might be surprised about when we're looking at Syria? And I'm literally going to ask you for one line, one sentence, one thought, just to take us out on, because that means that I've got 4 more bits of amazing information that to wrap up the conversation. Peter, what is it that we don't understand about the way Russia is seeing Syria?
Well, I think it's all, again, I would repeat that that's all about geopolitics and the place of Russia in the world.
Okay.
And the Russian people, a lot of Russian people are happy that now their country is more considered. As you brought up, it's more about nostalgia of the role of the Soviet Union. It's not about Syria.
Okay. Roman.
I think the very important thing is when you try to understand political views of Russian people, is understanding that the vast majority of Russians share conspiracy theories. They may be pro-governmental or anti-governmental. They can be very different, but they're usually very difficult, complicated conspiracy theories, and they don't usually put some idea of values or human rights inside this. So it's usually it's about power, it's about I don't know, about money, about guns, and they just think that the one who brings into this discussion the question of values and human rights, he's just a liar who tries to use their...
Roman, that's great. We'll end it there, because everybody's got a sentence, and your sentence was running over quite some bit. Victor, your final thought for us about how Russians see Syria.
I want to sum up with American comment, not Russian, but it's very good for Russians. Yes. Just a second. So Putin put an end to Obama's war. Putin, who is an ex-KGB agent, stopped the Nobel Peace Prize winning Obama from starting a war which would have killed thousands. Doesn't make much sense, does it?
Victor, you're so controversial. Thank you for that. Timothy, you have the last line. Go ahead.
I'm gonna air my own thoughts, because I won't say that most of Russians think like I, and I want to say that even half of our citizens think like me, but still I do think that the solution which ends with somebody who's still alive, rather than killing him and rather than killing any civilian, is better, and it doesn't care, and it doesn't mean anything. If Putin proposed it or Obama proposed it, whoever, when it is no war, it is still better than there is some war.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Timothy, say your first name and your last name.
My name is Timothy Vasilyev.
Victor, say your full name for us.
Viktor Levanov.
Perfect. Roman, your full name.
Roman Dobrokhotov.
Beautiful. Peter.
Peter Yeltsov.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I promised that I'd get all of your names correct on this program, and I delivered. Malika Bilal.
Well, that was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring in 2 last tweets from our community. This one kind of references what was just said a little bit earlier by Victor. Marcus writes in, he may be a hypocrite, meaning Putin, of course, but that doesn't mean he's wrong. And one last one, a little bit pessimistic. Boxton says, Cold War politics still in play between the US and Russia, and Syria is being used as a pawn by these 2 world superpowers. Of course, keep the tweets coming with hashtag AJStream.
Malika, you're just provoking Peter there. He can't resist muttering under his breath. Peter, you just have to do it online.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you, everybody, very much. On tomorrow's programme, here's a headline to make you sit up. Drought-stricken region discovers massive water reserves. We'll be heading to Turkana in Kenya tomorrow to check out that story. Until then, we'll be online at stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching. Take care.